morning, Biffsters. Welcome back. And today you can see that we're in Mexico on our trip around the world. I'm also joined by Sloppy the rabbit because she really enjoyed the story yesterday about how the rabbit lost his tail. And today's story is called Grandmother Growth and the Great Flood. So are you sitting comfortably? In the very beginning, there was only one man on earth. He was called Coy Mally, and he lived on top of a wild mountain in a rancheria, a house made of mud and stone. He was all alone except for a little black dog who kept him company. Coy Mally longed for a friend, for another human being to talk to. He hoped and prayed that someone would pass by, but nobody did, because there wasn't another living soul on earth. Perhaps, thought Coy Mally, if I grow enough food for a feast, then somebody might come along. So Coy Mally set about growing enough food for a whole family. He took his axe and he chopped down some of the pine trees that surrounded his rancheria. He cut back a clearing big enough for a field, and he dug the earth until it was really smooth. And then he planted rows of corn, rows of pumpkin, and rows of beans, all the food that a family would need to live. And every day Coy Mally went to the field to tend his crops, but there were no green shoots. He waited, but there were no strong stalks, and the ground was parched and dry like a desert, and nothing grew. And Coy Mally was really disappointed. "Oh, why won't anything grow?" he sighed. And suddenly there was a gust of wind, and there before him stood an old, old woman. It was Grandmother Growth, the oldest of the old, who brings new life. She had a face like a wrinkled brown berry and hair like snow-white wool. She wore a rough woven blanket, and she was leaning on a wooden staff. Grandmother Growth had heard Coy Mally. "Your crops will not grow, my son," she said, shaking her head, "because the ground is too dry. Crops need water, and lots of it. Do as I say, and the field will flourish." Grandmother Growth pointed her staff at a twisted fig tree. "Make a box from the fig tree about your width and length." Coy Mally took his axe and he cut down the fig tree, and he made a box of fig wood, just a little bit wider and a little bit longer than himself. And then he made a lid of fig wood that fitted the box perfectly, and the wood was so fresh that the box sprouted branches and green leaves. And when the box was finished, Grandmother Growth tapped the ground with her staff, and a little embroidered pouch appeared. She filled the pouch with 5 grains of corn, 5 pumpkin seeds, and 5 beans, and she tapped the ground with her staff a second time, and a pumpkin appeared. She peeled a thin slice of pumpkin rind. Then she tapped the ground a third time, and a tiny piece of coal appeared. Grandmother Growth blew on the coal, and it glowed, red hot with fire. She placed the burning coal on the pumpkin rind, and it smouldered there safely. "You will be needing these things when you arrive," she said, handing the pouch of seeds to the pumpkin rind and the pumpkin rind to Coy Mally. "Now, into the box with you, and call that dog of yours." "But where am I going?" asked Coy Mally. "Oh, you'll see when you get there," said the old woman. Coy Mally whistled, and his little black dogs leapt straight into the box. Coy Mally followed, and there was just enough room for him to snuggle down with the dog at his feet. And then Grandmother Growth fitted the fig tree lid onto the box. Inside the burning coal glowed, filling the box with light. Grandmother Growth climbed on top of the box and sat down. A parrot, a duck, and a macaw swooped down beside her and perched in the sprouting branches. And then Grandmother Growth pointed her staff at the sky. There was a gush of wind, dark clouds appeared, and it began to rain. The rain fell in large drops, splashing and pounding onto the box. The sky turned black, and it rained and rained and rained. The rain soaked the dry ground until it was a marsh. There was so much rain that the ground was awash with water, and the fig tree box began to float. It poured with rain until the whole world was flooded in water. Inside the box, it was all safe and warm, and Koi Mully listened to the drumming of the rain, and as the box rocked from side to side in the swelling waters, he fell asleep. It rained without stopping. It rained for 1 year. It rained for 2 years. It rained for 3 years and 4 years, and the box carried Koi Mully and the dog, the pouch of seeds and the pumpkin rind, Grandmother Growth and the birds in the branches over the high seas. They drifted north, south, east and west to the 4 farthest points of the world. And then, in the 5th year, Grandmother Growth pointed her staff at the dark clouds, and it stopped raining. The clouds scattered, and there was blue sky and a hot sun, and drop by drop the water began to dry up, until a little mountain peak jutted up just above the water. Grandmother Growth steered the box with her staff towards the mountain top. But the ground was just thick, slimy mud, and they couldn't land. They had to wait until all the mud had dried up. But the duck couldn't wait. She dived down into the mud. Her feet got covered in thick clay. The wet mud stuck fast between her toes, and it is still there to this very day. There's a lovely picture here of Grandmother Growth and Koi Mully sitting or laying in his box all warm and cosy and asleep. So ducks have had webbed feet ever since because of the clay that got stuck in between their toes. And after 5 days the water drained away and the ground was dry at last. Grandmother Growth tapped on the box with her staff. "Here we are, my son." Koi Mully and the dog leapt out of the box. The world was beautiful. Everything was fresh and lush, and there were waterfalls and green plants, brightly coloured flowers, and the scent of thick pine forests. There were wild crags and sheer ravines, and the purple-blue haze of distant mountains. The world was tender and new, like a shining looking-glass. "Plant your seeds, Koi Mully," whispered Grandmother Growth. "Now they will grow, and perhaps somebody will come along." Then there was a gush of wind, and Grandmother Growth was gone. Koi Mully took the glowing coal from the pumpkin rind and kindled a fire, and then he set to work. He built a new rancheria of mud and stone, surrounded by storehouses. He cut back a huge clearing, and he dug the earth until it was really smooth, and then he carefully planted the grains of corn, the pumpkin seeds, and the beans. Well, it wasn't long before green shoots burst from the soil. The earth was rich and damp, and everything grew. The corn was long and golden, the pumpkins swelled, and the beans were fat and juicy. Koi Mully filled his storehouses with these tasty crops. There was more than enough food for a family. Koi Mully was sure that somebody would come along soon, but nobody did. There was still not another living soul on the earth. And then, one day, when Koi Mully was returning from his field, he smelt the warm scent of baking coming from his rancheria. Koi Mully went inside, and there by the fire was a freshly baked tortilla, his favourite food. Koi Mully gobbled up the little pancake. It was just right, hot and floury on the outside, and soft and stuffed with spicy sauce on the inside. Yum. "Who left this tortilla for me?" he wondered. "Oh, maybe it's a present from Grandmother Growth." The next day, there was another tortilla by the fire, and it was just as good as the first one. And on the 3rd day, when there was a 3rd tortilla, Koi Mully thought, "Grandmother Growth wouldn't leave me 3 tortillas. Somebody else must be making them for me, and I'm going to find out exactly who it is." So the next morning, Koi Mully took his blanket, his hat, and his digging tools, and he said in a very loud voice, in case somebody was listening, "I'm just off to work in the field." And then instead of going out, he hid behind the door. Well, he didn't have to wait long. for into the house came his own little black dog. Koi Mally watched. The dog dug her claws into her fur, and there was a ripping and a tearing sound. And the little black dog peeled off her skin as if she was taking off a fur coat. And out stepped a graceful girl. She had long black hair and shining black eyes, and she was just about the same age as Koi Mally. The girl went over to the fire and she put a handful of ground corn into a pot of warm water, and then she stirred the pot to make the batter for the tortillas. Koi Mally was amazed. "A friend!" he shouted joyfully, leaping out from behind the door. "You've arrived at last!" Koi Mally was so happy to see another human being that he didn't want to lose her ever again. So he bent down and he picked up the dog's black skin and he threw it onto the fire. The dog's skin burst into flames, but as the skin burned, the girl began to howl with pain. She was burning as well. The girl was covered in terrible burns from head to foot. Koi Mally rushed over to the pot of warm corn water and he picked it up and he dashed over and he put water all over the girl's burnt body. And as soon as the corn water touched her skin, all the burns vanished and her skin was completely healed and there wasn't a mark on her body. "Thank you, Koi Mally," she whispered. "You've broken the spell. Now I can be human at last." Then Koi Mally and his new friend cooked tortillas. They sat by the fire and they ate and they talked and they laughed, as if it had never been any other way. And in time, they had a family, and there was more than enough food for everyone. And their children had children, who had children, who had children, and they populated the whole of Mexico. And their children are the Huichol people of Mexico. They still remember Koi Mally and his wife, well, the little black dog, and how they survived the great flood in a fig tree box. And to this day, they still say that the best cure for a burn is to soothe it with warm corn water. Now, wasn't that a lovely story? And it's true. If you want to look up the Huichol people in Mexico, it's really interesting. You can Google it and read a little bit more about that traditional tale. And again, if you've got any pictures that you want to post, put them in the comments below this post. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.